Okay, so we are back. I'm cozy. I had to take that bun out of my head. Anyway, we are on to episode 5. I'm exhausted. So, yeah, let's dive into this episode. Like, who are you to close off Earth? For legal reasons, if any kids are watching, you're working out.
The new docuseries reveals explosive allegations behind the scenes at Nickelodeon.
It hits you immediately how inappropriate some of this content was.
Quiet on set.
So we're getting a real-time reaction of the documentary in the documentary. So it was originally the 4 parts or whatever, or maybe if it was 2 parts and then they ended up doing the 3 and 4 because Drake Bell decided to tell a story. But either way, we're getting this episode 5 to talk about what's being talked about. That's interesting.
Once I saw it again as an adult, I was like, oh.
So much of this country's entertainment industry is built on harming children.
As long as those checks come in, that's what matters to y'all.
What I do want to talk about is never letting this stuff happen again.
Both an outpouring of support and horror that this could have happened under the watchful eye of so many adults. I'm curious why you decided to participate after all these years of not talking about it.
The choice to participate was a tough one.
It feels like he's acting. A lot of the times when he speaks, I feel like he can't tell the difference between Drake Bell and Drake and Josh, or Drake or any other character he's ever played. He's played other shows and movies and stuff, so he's very media trained.
Will Friedle and Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World wrote letters in support of Brian Peck, and they recently spoke about it on their podcast.
He then asked us to support him and go to court with him, which a lot of us did. And we're sitting in that courtroom on the wrong side of everything, of course, having no idea, filled with child actors, to the point where the victim's mother turned and said, look at all the famous people you brought with you, and it doesn't change what you did to my kid. And I just sat there wanting to die.
No, you didn't.
Where it was like, what the hell am I doing here?
You could have got
Hearing
up.
from Will and hearing from Ryder, does it change at all how you think about that day now?
No. What?
No.
Like, you had mad time.
I worked with Will on Spider-Man, and there was a lot of opportunity to
Which Spider-Man?
apologize or talk about it, and never did. But also, I mean, it's a very difficult subject to bring up.
I mean, it's not that
especially in a
difficult
work
to apologize to
environment.
somebody
So
for that.
Everybody deals with their trauma in different ways.
I mean, I'm glad that Drake Bell told his story. I'm glad that people know who Brian Peck is now that it's too late anyway. I mean, never too late. He could still have been doing stuff to kids right now. We don't know. I feel like they're trying so hard to clean up his image that it's coming across now as like acty, like it's just.
And there's so many people who nobody's reached out to me.
No one at all?
Personally, no, not one person who's written one of those letters has reached out to me.
But y'all on social media
Is
running your
the
jibs.
idea that this wasn't a bigger scandal 21 years ago.
3 or 4 months prior to his arrest was the Jason Handy case.
Nothing.
No articles. I mean, for those 2 cases to happen so closely together at the same network on the same show.
I was surprised in the documentary about Dan Schneider's support of you. How does that square with what basically everybody else said about their treatment by Dan?
I mean, it was very, very hard to watch. It was really hard to watch because I can only speak from my experience. And I can't take away from anyone else's experience. You know, I can just say that during this time with Brian, Dan was really the only one from the network that made an effort to.
We wonder why. And then he gave you Drake and Josh, and that became one of his top. Then from Drake and Josh built iCarly. Like, we cannot forget that Carly was first. Megan, Dan had that vision. He knew what he was doing. And to keep you in his good graces and to keep you happy, you have your show. Now we're not going to make this a big deal. Now it's not going to be on the news, and you're not going to care because you're going to be a star. I'm going to give you everything that you wanted. Now your mom doesn't have to worry about anything anymore. It's so obvious. And it's like nobody's saying, like, quiet on set. Nobody's saying the quiet parts out loud.
with Amanda and so many others. I mean, we've lost so many. I've watched tragedy after tragedy, and it's just heartbreaking. I think a lot of the help was being in groups where you're hearing other people's stories and going, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
You talk a lot in the doc about your mom and your dad. How's your relationship with them now?
I mean, we have a fantastic relationship, and I'm so grateful for that. And my mom and I have an incredible relationship. I do feel there's a lot of people kind of after the doc.
I'm sorry. I know they keep saying that his mom is such a sweet, sweet Christian woman. He said, I feel like there's a lot of people after the doc. He's probably about to say that a lot of people have been saying, like, his mom didn't do what she needed to do. Maybe. I don't know. But that's what I'm about to say, too. Your child's father came to you and said, please keep my son away from this man. He is a predator. He clocked it. She lets the man move in and get closer and brainwash her. Yo, like, oh my gosh.
Going after my mom a bit, but he was so good at what he was doing, Brian. He was so calculated.
This is why, like, when you really choose your partner, make sure it's someone that when you come to them with something and you say, I have this feeling about this, it's like a very serious feeling and I need you to honor these feelings. You need someone that is going to really take those feelings into account and not do this. And they weren't even together at that point, but even as someone that you choose to have a kid with. And a lot of people are like, oh, you can't choose. You can. A lot of people are careless. Even the people you choose to just lay with. If mistakes happen, if you know mistakes happen, make sure that the people that you are sleeping with and making mistakes with will at least be on a page with you, that when you're co-parenting, you're like, this is what I want for my kid. Look at Kanye and Kim. That was all vanity. That was all PR. They were put together way back from when he was coming to visit her at the stores in the Kardashians. They set that up. He don't want his kids going to school with the Clinton kids and all the Hollywood kids. That's where Kim is sending the kids. We have to start taking, and I say we, like, because even me, this is something that I had to really sit with for the last couple of years. Like, I have to make better decisions. Like, we all do. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm not pointing fingers. This is a group discussion. Like, I genuinely feel like we all have to make better decisions. That's why I tweeted that time. And I want to do like a podcast episode on it. But I said, your partner is a reflection of how much you love yourself. And so many people wanted to argue me down about it. And I'm like, how could you be mad about that? Do you not love the person that you're with? Do you not trust that they are? So then why are you with them? If you don't want your partner to be a reflection of how much you love yourself. It's very simple math. Because if you don't trust yourself, if you don't love yourself, you're not going to pick a partner who loves and trusts and that you can trust. You're going to probably pick someone who's flimsy, who's emotionally unavailable, someone that you're trying to build a trauma bond with. Like, it's a lot of things, and you're probably not making the right decisions in that moment. You might also attract someone who does care about you and will help you out of that, but let's be serious. And even if it's not that serious, sometimes you just meet people, you fall in love, but you don't have the same mental capacity. And then you bring kids into this situation. I just feel like so many things could be prevented if we had more of a community mindset. And not a sheep mindset, not the herd mentality, but real community.
It's tragic.
I want to ask you a little bit about your former co-star, Josh.
We have such a close connection and this unique bond that's so rare in this industry that
they do not like each other. Well, Josh don't like Drake.
Special. And when I wrote the new song I just put out, and the video that addresses the abuse and other things that I've gone through in my life, kind of the most vulnerable, honest, self-reflective.
I was listening to the music and not paying attention to the video. I didn't know they was about to show us the video. So we got
self-reflective stuff that I've written ever.
And the file taking him into the wow, do not disturb. I'm sorry, that just pissed me off so bad, because when it first started, I was like, feeling like we on Broadway, like, the little the song sounds good. And now I'm like mad. Like,
coming up next, we're joined in the studio by two contributors from Quiet on Set. Have you guys spoken to Dan since?
Yeah, I got a phone call.
How'd you get my number?
Here with me now are
me?
Giovanni Samuels and Brian Hearns.
People were like, yo, my childhood is now traumatized by this. And I'm like, I don't want you guys to feel that way. Not all of it was terrible. There are still some beautiful pieces left in it. We're okay.
Dan Schneider posted a video defending himself. He also apologized for his actions.
I would have changed it on the spot.
Oh, please. He would have fired them on the spot.
I thought it was funny. If I could be candid, Dan was an actor before all of this and gave us a nice performance. Where was all of this apologizing when Jeanette McCurdy's book came out?
Or when Angelique Bates had said something very publicly.
If you take the inappropriate jokes away, do you have a show?
Did you think those jokes were funny to hear?
No. One, we're kids, we don't know, we're a bit naive. And when you have a showrunner and he's laughing the hardest, you go along with it.
The foot stuff was crazy.
He thought the foot stuff was funny. You're like...
This is what I'm saying. She's asking you, did you ever think that any of this stuff was inappropriate? No, we were young. It was going right over our heads. We were naive. I never liked the foot stuff. So if you never liked the foot stuff, so then back then you did think that the foot stuff was inappropriate. Nobody asks follow-up questions. Like, so you did think back then that it was inappropriate.
The adults are laughing. You go along with it.
So you went along with it, but you did know that it was weird.
Diversity.
You did feel weird about it.
It was very evident from the first day. It was just the two of us. That's usually the first thing you do as a black person or a person of color.
Count the black people.
In front and behind the camera. There were
two people. 4 if you include our moms. So they talked about us being overlooked, and then he overlooked us in his answer. What do you do with that?
Did you feel like you were stereotypes, tokenized roles?
I was told, you're so talented, we don't know what to do with you, which was why I came up with sketches and ideas to help.
Have you guys spoken to Dan since?
I got a phone call.
Oh.
He reached out a week before the documentary aired. He asked if I could give a quote of support. He was like, oh, I love Gio. She's nice, great. She could tell my side.
I don't know what possessed him.
So he asked you if you would give a quote of support.
He asked because I did come back to do Henry Danger, which was some time later. He was like, you had a good time on set, right? Right? I told him I was terrified of him.
Was he surprised by that?
I don't know. I said, you had the power to make people stars. I was intimidated by you.
If our children should so decide, put me in front of the camera as dad today, no, absolutely not.
I wasn't looking for my son to be this great star, and that's my dependency. My dependency is raising a healthy child. I'm a Leo. I don't know if that makes a difference to any of you guys. I'm a lion.
Mama said I'm a Leo.
Did you think your mom was responsible?
I think that it was like, well, whose fault is it? Is it my fault? Is it, you know, she's the outspoken one.
How bad did it get?
Was ruined.
It wasn't, and for 6 months, I was really mad at my mom.
No, it was all of his life. He didn't trust me anymore. He was resentful. He ran away from home.
What brought you back together?
The documentary. It was a light bulb moment to go back in time and discover, as a mom, that moment ruined us.
Oh my gosh, I can talk to 13, 14-year-old Brian now.
Right.
And say, this wasn't your fault, it wasn't her fault. These people had it out for y'all.
There was a scene we were doing, it was called The Literals. And every time I said spit it out, she would spit what was in her mouth, whether it was the water or whatever, like directly in my face. Everybody thought it was so funny. Ha, ha, ha. Everybody's laughing. Like, I was so mad that the director was like, listen, Raquel, she's the star of the show. Don't make too much of a problem. I'm gonna ask her not to spit in your face, but you have to keep your cool.
That's racist. Period.
That nose boy, like, there was so, oh my gosh, like, there was so many racist moments with the token black person on set. That's what I said too, with the girls' room.
Shane Lyons, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So what was it like for you on the set?
Pretty dynamic. And for someone who always wanted to be a funny guy on television, I wouldn't say it was a dream come true, but it seemed like a really great stepping stone.
And then was there a point where that shifted?
Yeah, they just fired me. And I never learned why. I think I'm sort of a unique case and really lucky in that my parents were chefs. I knew that no matter what, I can kind of follow my mom's footsteps.
A lot of young actors don't have that.
What sort of continuing education are we providing them?
Why did you want to come forward?
I think the only way we can change is to really evaluate the past.
You were on the set with Brian Peck.
Yeah.
Was he as charming as people would describe him?
100%. 100%. And we were enamored with, at least me personally, that there is an adult who's also a cast member, who is someone that we knew we could kind of run things by.
When you heard Drake's story, what did you think?
I think it was very brave of him to go on national television and say, that poor kid, now man, it's gut-wrenching. And I feel very blessed and lucky that nothing like that happened to me. There were certainly some passes, you know.
That he made on you?
Yeah.
Did you realize at the time that they were passes? What did he say?
No. When he asked me if I knew what blue balls was, I thought they were racquetballs. And I'm kind of alone in the green room set, and he sits next to me and goes, because previously in the conversation, they were talking about blue balls. And I just didn't know what they were. He goes, well, we know what blue balls are, right, Shane? And I said, yeah, like racquetballs. You know, and as I think back now, as an adult, as a 36-year-old, I go, would I ever have a conversation with a 13-year-old boy like he had with me? No. It makes absolutely zero sense for a 13-year-old girl or 13 anybody.
What would a protection for kids on the set, what does it look like?
So updating the law first and foremost, so that no individual who is a convicted child molester can ever get on a Hollywood set again.
The issue is that you have to get convicted. So, like, yes, it's terrible that they'll let someone back after they're convicted. What about the people that never get caught? Or that they have multiple accusations under their belts and people just sweep them under the rug?
Dan said he had many layers above him. He had a boss, and his boss had a boss, and his boss had a boss.
Sounds like the farmer that blames the tractor for the poor harvest.
So this has been a time for you guys to kind of like do a little reunion.
These are the people I grew up with. These are my brothers. We have this special connection with each other. It's just disheartening that it had to be this that brought us back together again.
It requires a lot of bravery to come forward and tell your story.
Not gonna lie, I mean, that was cool. It was kind of a bunch of hoopla. I still don't feel like Dan got enough heat. Do we care what Dan said? Do we? I do. I need to know.
Hey, it's Boogie. I played T-Bo on Nickelodeon's iCarly. I got a chance to watch The Quiet on Set.
He had the nerve. He had the absolute nerve to go get his other token black person to interview him. Never forget that his wife was the woman who was on the Tyra Banks show telling the Patti LaBelle, cupcake good, paper bad, don't eat the paper.
I got a chance to watch The Quiet on Set program, and I reached out to Dan to see if it was something.
Oh, you reached out? Dan didn't come tell you to come interview him? All right. And it's on Dan's channel. Okay. Why it's not on T-Bo's channel?
I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about what we saw over the last 2 nights.
I'm really glad you're here because I believe this is important. Got a lot of things to unpack. But before I dive into my topics that I'd like to discuss, is there anything you'd like to start off with?
Absolutely. Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret, and I definitely owe some people a pretty strong apology.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday, it was disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation. And even additionally, I apologize to the people who were walking around Video Village or wherever they happened, because there were lots of people there who witnessed it who also may have felt uncomfortable. So I owe them an apology as well.
Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. What I saw, not cool.
If I can cut right to the chase, let me just say, no writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room. Ever, period, the end, no excuses.
How much is he paying you? How much is he paying you? What is
Comedy writers have been in writers' rooms and they are aware that a lot of times there are inappropriate jokes made and inappropriate topics come up. But the fact that I participated in that, especially when I was leading the room, it embarrasses me. I shouldn't have done it. And I can tell you why it hurts really bad for me.
You are not sorry you did it. You're sorry it came out.
It meant the world to me that I was getting those opportunities. And I went in and I got lucky because they were great. My first couple of experiences were fantastic. And the fact that I didn't pay that forward to every employee that walked through my door, it hurts my heart. Because
No, it doesn't.
And I wish I could go back and
You don't have, oh my gosh.
In the writer's room, there's no doubt that sometimes those jokes went beyond the pale and I said things that went too far or made practical jokes that went too far. And that was wrong. And that was because, you know, I was an inexperienced producer. I was immature. Wouldn't happen today. I'm just really sorry it happened. I hate that anybody worked for me and didn't have a good time. You know me. You've been on my sets. Look, I've had some employees that have worked for me for 10 years, some more than 20 years, who would work with me again. But not everybody. There's still a significant number that didn't have a great time working for me. So my batting average isn't nearly high enough in that area. And the way they wouldn't get the best of me is that I would let the pressure of doing 40 or even more episodes per year, I would let that pressure get to me, which a good boss should never, ever do.
Was there specific things that you were doing?
Sure, I would.
This is the man who was on the red carpet. I can put them in any horrible predicament that I choose. I shouldn't have said any of these things. I shouldn't have thought about these things. I should, but. Bend over on that chair over there and pretend you're being
snap at people sometimes. I would be snarky when I could have given them a nicer answer. I would not give people the time that they needed. I would be in too big a hurry to get on to the next thing I had to do. Watching that show, there were so many times I wanted to pick up a phone and call some of those people and say, I'm so sorry, and let's talk about it. And I wish you'd had a better time, and I wish I could have shown you a better experience.
Some people think some of those jokes are inappropriate for children. What do you think of that?
All these jokes that the show covered over the past 2 nights, every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny. Now we have some adults looking back at them 20 years later through their lens, and they're looking at them and they're saying, I don't think that's appropriate for a kid's show. And I have no problem with that. If that's how anyone feels, let's cut those jokes out of the show.
You purposely named Amanda's character Penelope Taint. Be so for real right now. Like, this is pathetic. This is pathetic. We're 5 minutes in. It's not pathetic.
Cut it. I want my shows to be popular. I want everyone to like. The more people who like the shows, the happier I am.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in a show that needs to be cut because it's upsetting somebody, let's cut it.
So I think it's big for you to say with your work, if it's viewed as that today, you don't have a problem.
Cut it. Cut it.
I mean,
it's already done. He's already been paid.
Is put any content in a show that's going to upset my audience and make them want to turn off the TV. Why would I ever want to do that?
That makes sense.
The notion that I had the power to just produce whatever I wanted and have it air is completely...
I have the power to put them in any horrible predicament that I choose.
Okay.
There were many, many levels of scrutiny, okay? We had executives...
Yes, the same executives that came and said, hey, is this like a taint? And you're like, no, it's like something's tainted. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's so much scrutiny.
No, these are my bosses, and they're approving all of this stuff. Okay? And we're also shooting it in front of all sorts of adults and caregivers and the set teacher and the families. Everybody's watching it.
We tricked all of y'all to be comfortable in these situations to think that it's all jokes. So now I can look back and say, hey, but they were all there. They were all in the room. Brian can say, oh, I showed them all my letters with John Wayne Gacy. Nobody said anything. They thought it was cool. They saw the picture of Pogo the Clown. Everybody in the situation was groomed.
And if anybody had said anything, hey, we don't like that, that's not appropriate, then it would have been cut out.
You would have been cut out. If anybody would have said something, they would have been cut out of the scene, of the audience, of the parent, whatever they were, they was cut out.
Push back a little bit because the series painted you in this way that you were just the guy that was doing what he wanted, and people were afraid to confront you about things. So just humor me, say that was the case. What would have been
He must have attended some dance parties or something like.
If nobody on the set, if all of the dozens and dozens of adults that were on the set, if they didn't say anything, if my bosses said, if they insisted, you got to make a change here, you got to cut that.
Seeing some of those on-air dares, seeing it now, what do you think of that?
I think that some of the on-air dares went too far. I think they pushed the envelope too far. Not all of them, not most of them, but some did. Nickelodeon wanted to do their version of Fear Factor. We would come up with all these ideas of dares they could do, give them to the network, and they would say, tell us the ones that were okay. I had no indication that any kid ever had a problem with them. But when I was watching the show over the past 2 nights, I now know that there were kids who did have problems with the on-air dare. I am so sorry to any kid who ever had to do a dare or anything that they didn't want to do or weren't comfortable doing. We went out of our way to make sure they were safe and that everything was done properly, but if a kid was scared and didn't want to do it, kids shouldn't have had to do it.
2 former writers viewers, 2 women, who spoke about a wage discrepancy. Now, I know that you don't divvy out salaries. Talk to me about that part.
I know you don't. What is he paying you? What does he have on you? You were stick boy. You had, like, what? You had donuts on a stick, tacos on a stick, spaghetti on a stick. You, like, why are you even talking? Like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
I have nothing to do with paying writers. I never have. I've never made a writer's deal. And of all the writers I've been in a writer's room with, I never even knew how much most of them were getting paid.
Yeah, but we saw these 2 women who were writers for you sharing one salary. How does that happen?
It's very simple. There's a common practice in television when hiring writers. If you have a spot for a new writer, sometimes You'll go to 2 writers and say, hey, if you 2 new writers for your first job are willing to share a salary, you can both have the job. They have the opportunity to say, yes, that sounds good, or no, no thank you. In this case, it was 2 women. I've done another show where that teaming was done with 2 male writers, and they split a salary. I did another show where it was a male and a female writer.
They also highlighted 2 black actors who said that they felt overlooked, never going to speak on anyone else's journey. I can talk about how my experience was with you, what I saw prior to working with you, but again, I don't want to speak on...
This is also an adult, 6-foot-something black man who was an adult on the show. You were another adult around a bunch of kids. There was no time to be intimidating you unless he did. But really, who's doing the bending right now? Because you're dragging this. This is crazy. This is insane.
I saw you be honored for diversity in your work.
Yes, and the reason for that is diversity has always been very important to me in my shows. Very first Nickelodeon show I ever made, that's very evident, as it is in the second one, and then the first movie I ever made for Nickelodeon, which starred Kenan and Kel, and every show I did after that.
Amanda Bynes was brought up in the series, and her emancipation, and how you were involved in that.
Amanda was between the ages of 16 and 17, and she wanted to get emancipated from her parents, which was a fairly common thing with successful young actors, at least at the time.
Sure.
What about when she was pregnant at 13? Let's not skip that. They didn't talk about that in the documentary, of course, but...
And she wanted that for herself. So she turned to her team, which included her lawyer, her agent, her manager, her publicist, me, because she included me as part of her team, thought of me that way. We supported her. She tried to get emancipated. It ended up not working out. She didn't.
Well, since we're here, let's stay here for a moment. There was also an incident where she had ran away from home, if you would. Can you talk to us a little bit just to clear the air of exactly what happened in that situation?
Yes. One night, it was very late, well after midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning. She was upset. She had had some conflict with, I think, her father, and she called me. I was immediately concerned about her safety. I called someone who I knew was fairly nearby. That person was able to go and pick her up. She ended up being taken to the police.
Regardless of what some people may think, I think it's only positive that you are there for people when they need you. That said, let's talk about some of the things that have just been swirling forever. You were banned from your set.
Never happened. Yeah, maybe some people thought I got banned.
So it was more of an assumption because this guy's usually here and now he's not. Okay?
All I know is I was never banned from the set.
Yeah. The darkest part of this series discussed child predators. Now, I want to make sure that we clear a couple of things up.
Okay.
Brian Peck was not hired by you.
No, I did not hire Brian Peck.
This was a Tolan Robbins production?
Yeah, and when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need? Which Drake mentioned in the show that we watched last night.
Yeah.
And
just like he called Giovanni, he called Drake and said, hey, the documentary is coming out. Remember, I was there for you. Remember how long I've been, I've just been here,
I heard that he went to court when this guy was being tried, Peck, and when Drake walked in, he saw 50 people sitting on the side of the courtroom supporting Peck. A lot of them pretty famous. Of course, Drake was devastated that happened. And even more disappointing, 41 of those people wrote letters for Peck, character letters, praising him for who he was and asking for leniency, and they knew that he was guilty. They knew he had confessed to some degree, and they still did this.
We're shifting blame. He's right. but we're shifting.
That's baffling that adults would do that. I don't know if people know this.
This is sick.
But Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day.
I bet you do.
To me at the time,
she don't have no discernment.
Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. And would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course.
Give him his, oh my gosh. What? What was that? Who was that? No, the switch was so, no, what was that? Absolutely not. Somebody, no, please tell me what was that?
At the time, and she said,
thanks.
she came to me at the time and she said, Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. Would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course. And I did. And he ended up going to prison and serving his time. And yeah, that was probably the darkest part of my career. And here's the kicker that I really don't get. After he got out of prison and was, to my knowledge, a registered offender, he was hired on a Disney Channel show.
Shifting the blame.
I don't understand.
What about Jeanette McCurdy? What about Ariana Grande?
I appreciate the vulnerability that you use in knowing that there's definitely things that you would have and should have done differently. Is there anything that we haven't discussed?
There's a bunch of things you haven't discussed. What?
Yeah, there's definitely things that I would do differently. One, when you're hiring young actors, minors, to work in television, I would suggest that we have a licensed therapist there to oversee that process of making sure that those kids really wanted to do this job, that they really wanted to be on television. Maybe they should even be informed about what that means. What's it gonna mean if you're famous? What's that gonna mean on social media? What's it gonna mean within your family? Let them find out. And then that way, if a kid doesn't want to be on a TV show, they can opt out. That therapist could come to us and say, this kid doesn't want to do it. Their parents aren't understanding of what's going to come. And then we could avoid the mistake of ever putting a kid in a TV show that didn't want to be there. And additionally,
he's making this about kids not wanting to be there when y'all shouldn't have had this work environment for the children. This is really sick.
That I would change is how I treat people. I definitely at times didn't give people the best of me, and sometimes just straight up rude. When I watched the show, I could see the hurt in some people's eyes, and it made me feel awful and sorry. I wish I could go back, you know, especially to those earlier years of my career, and never ever feel like it was okay to be an asshole to anyone ever.
What are you getting out of this? Your name's not even in the title. It's not even blank. I don't even know your name. You're stick guy, bro. Like, are we being serious right now? We don't even know your name, and you're sitting up here being thirsty. Oh my gosh. Oh, who's doing the bending? He's squinting like if he's saying something profound. Like, what is?
I wanted to make funny TV shows for kids, and we definitely did that. But if I could go back, I would get it done in different ways. I'd just be nicer as often as possible and listen more to the people on my team.
You go to hell. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What do the comments
They knew he had
say?
confessed to some degree.
The comments are turned off. I bet they are. Oh my gosh, that is the first place I wanted to go right now. That's actually crazy. That's actually insane. He is a liar. Wow. This entire Quiet on Set saga has gotten way too long. It is draining. So yes, I guess everything else is just gonna be conspiracy until it's not. I mean, shout out to everybody that did, you know, contribute to the documentary and come forward, and at least people are listening now and everything doesn't seem so crazy or far-fetched, you know. Also really good to remember that these are real people. This was their real lives. It's not easy to talk about this stuff and to have people dissecting your life and your stories and stuff, so, you know. But Dan and Boogie Stickman, they can go to hell. Oh my gosh. I'm supposed to be ending the video and I'm so angry. But I love you guys. I will see you in the next video.
I'm gonna sip this cup.